by our third speaker, Professor Jamal Abbas, Board of Trustee of the Journalism Studies Association of the Philippines, or JSAP, and he will be discussing social media elections and the Mindanao Vote. Professor Abbas, good afternoon, sir. Go ahead, sir.
So I'll be talking about social media, Philippine elections, and the Mindanao Vote. For the past 7 years or so, the Philippines has been touted as the social media nation of the world. This is reminiscent of the time when the Philippines was being hailed as the texting capital of the world, even before the turn of the millennium. But at first glance at the statistics, it doesn't seem so. The country is not even near the top 20 of the highest internet penetration rates or adoption rate. Look at where the Philippines is. And according to the records, the top 10 internet adoption rates in the world all have 99% internet adoption rates. That means practically all the citizens there have internet connection. So, relatively low internet adoption rate. Add to that, we have low GDP per capita since we are not a rich country. We all know that we have very expensive broadband rate, high internet prices, and we have very low internet speeds. So how can we be the social media nation of the world? That seems to be counterintuitive. Well, most Filipinos may not have the fanciest iPhones or fastest Wi-Fi, but they don't seem to mind connecting to the internet and staying there for hours. The free Facebook schemes for cell phone is a major factor. It gives so many low-income Filipinos a taste of Facebook for free, even though they could not see the photos. Thus, when it comes to spending time in the internet, mostly using cell phones, the Filipinos are the world's champions. That is the reason why the Philippines is called the social media nation of the world, as reported by Rappler, Statista, and so many other sources. Now, South Koreans may spend more time in the internet than the Philippines, as you can see here in the graph. 10 hours and 46 minutes a day on the internet, while Filipinos spend only 10 hours and 27 minutes. But when it comes to spending time in social media, the Filipinos spend so many hours more than the South Koreans. So there's a difference in spending time in the internet and spending time in social media. Most Filipinos spend it in social media, while the South Koreans spend it in other places in the cyberspace. Also, the Filipinos spend more time in the internet on mobiles or cell phones, using their cell phones. So, I guess the title of social media capital of the world seems to be firmly in the Philippines' hands. But what do Filipinos do online? Interestingly, Filipinos top the charts in watching online video as a source of learning, especially now in the pandemic period. Watching vlogs seems to be very popular among young Filipinos. This is probably because mainstream media organizations like ABS-CBN support vloggers by putting them under contract and promoting them. They top the charts at 60%. Taiwan comes in as a far second at 40%. And most well-to-do Filipinos watch streaming TV, especially Netflix. And when they watch Netflix, they watch hours on end. And what many high school and college students prefer over attending classes is playing internet video games. Filipinos also top the charts in following influencers in social media. More than half Filipino internet users follow influencers. In sum, the Filipinos top the charts in many categories in social media. I suppose they deserve to be called the most social media nation in the world. Now, when it comes to getting news, according to SWS, 34% or almost a fourth of the Filipinos get their news from Facebook. 69% from television, 19% from radio, and only 1% prefer to read newspapers. But Pulse Asia survey done in September 21, 44% of Filipinos get the news from Facebook. So that's a jump from 22% to 41% of Filipinos getting news from Facebook. Social media platforms, despite criticisms against it from all sides, Facebook remains the #1 platform in the world. FB was used by 2.9 billion people in the world. YouTube was used by 2.56, while WhatsApp was used by 2 billion. In the Philippines, Facebook is used by practically all Filipinos who have access to the internet. The key word here is access. According to the data from most sites, there are 95.2 million FB users in the Philippines, or 84% of the population. Now, this data could not be correct. This number is being bandied about everywhere, but this is misinformation. The number is equivalent to all Filipinos 9 years old above, plus the children aged 5 to 9 years old. So this is a population. This means that all of this, from the third row up, all of them have Facebook users, and including half of the 5 to 9 years old. Well, actually, the number probably means FB accounts, including FB pages owned by people in the Philippines, because many people have several accounts, including FB pages. The troll armies of politicians usually require each cyber soldier to have at least 5 FB accounts. So maybe that's why the number of FB users are so big. But despite the inflated figures, users of FB, Facebook, and its sister app, Messenger, are still so many. Could go as high as 70 million. And this is so much more than the other social media platforms like Instagram, Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter. Social media for election purposes. The fact that millions of Filipinos spend most of their time in social media means that that is also the best way to get in touch with them. Mainstream media like TV may still be a great way of connecting with the electorate, but online media may prove to be a better alternative since it is much cheaper. According to Pulse Asia, 63% of Filipino adults use the internet, 84% in NCR, 65% for the rest of Luzon, 62% in the Visayas, and 47% in Mindanao. So the statistics are clear. At least 68% of Filipinos have internet access, or about 75 million people. That is more than the estimated voters for the 2022 elections. COMELEC announced that there are 67.5 million registered voters for the coming elections. And the Filipinos top the world in time spent in internet and social media. Filipinos with internet access generally spend 10 hours and 27 minutes every day. So it seems clear that social media is very, very active in the Philippines, and so in the elections. Let's go to the 2010 media elections. So-called social media elections is not a new phenomenon. The Cambridge Analytica scandal exploded in 2018, where whistleblower revealed that CA obtained personal data of some 87 million Facebook users. 1.2 million of them were Filipino Facebook users to help political personalities. And Cambridge Analytica's parent firm claims it won the 2010 election for the Philippine president. In an interview with Maria Ressa, the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower, Christopher Wiley, said that they would make money as they go into the countries with relatively underdeveloped regulatory infrastructure or questionable rule of law, where it was easy to get away with things, and create propaganda and support politicians who would be willing later to pay back favors, unquote. In 2016, let's go to 2016 social media. The 2016 polls was branded as social media elections. Many PR teams organized troll armies during the 2016 elections. Now, several PR personalities came out admitting such things. These are armies of people organized to use social media, especially Facebook, to promote their candidate, spread disinformation on opposing candidates, bully the supporters of opposing candidates, spread their posts far and wide by sharing them several times. According to many reports, Facebook helped Mr. Duterte win the elections. In fact, international publications like The Guardian even mentioned allegations that Facebook helped Duterte in more ways than one. There seems to be more to it than meets the eye. As it says here, Facebook placed staff in the offices of Rodrigo Duterte when he ran for president of the Philippines in 2016, even though Duterte ran on an explicit platform of vigilante violence and extrajudicial killings. Now, Mr. Duterte did not have a bona fide national political party. He did not have as much money as the other candidates. He was hardly known outside the Davao region. He does not come from a nationally prominent family. He really had nothing to boast of aside from allegedly making Davao City prosperous. And there were allegations that he killed people. In fact, he admitted them. He boasted it. So Duterte's win was really something for the books. And many say he had help from a certain kind of book. After the elections, the troll armies continued. But this time it was just the army of the winning president. Anyone posting against the president's policies would be attacked with threatening comments, and according to Maria Ressa, even threatening rape and death. Fake news proliferated. Internationally, Facebook was accused of helping authoritarian regimes like that of India's Modi, Philippines' Duterte, and USA's very own Donald Trump. In 2019, Los Angeles Times warned Americans that troll armies is a growth industry in the Philippines and might be coming to the American elections. In the 2022 elections, it is now being defined as truly social media elections. There is a pandemic and human movements are somewhat restricted. In a news article by Internews, it says potential vets already started advertising on Facebook as early as 1 year before the elections. Several politicians, both local and national, were mentioned as paying for FB ads, like these guys, Trillanes, Villaferte. Fake news. In a CNN Philippines news report, the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting reminded Filipinos to try to discern what is fake news and misinformation in social media, as, quote, it remains a key player in the upcoming 2022 elections due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In January, there's quite a fake news going around in two regions of Mindanao, Sorsogon and Davao, and it's all about a supposedly a vaccine exempt card. So if you have this card, you'll be exempted from taking vaccines, the COVID-19 vaccines, and still get same privileges as those who are vaccinated. That's just an example of fake news going around. Now, Mindanao voters, some of them here earlier mentioned the numbers of Mindanao voters. Zamboanga Peninsula has 2.3 million voters. Northern Mindanao is 3.06 million voters. The Davao region has 3 million. Sorsogon has 2.6. Caraga region has 1.9. And the BAM has 2.4 million voters, registered voters. And approximately 3.6 million are Muslim voters. Now, What are the issues? Usually in Mindanao, the number one concern for the national public is peace and order, mainly because it gets the most media mileage. Every election, there are so many areas declared hotspots by COMELEC and put under the control of the PNP and AFP. Now, for an outsider, that is good news. The ballots are going to be protected. But that can also be bad news. That makes the PNP and AFP control the elections, especially the counting of the votes. Now, I regard it as a bad news, by the way. No solid South. In an online forum hosted by Internews on November 30, 2021, the panel of experts declared that there is no such thing as solid South or Mindanao Vote. Now, let's see. Arab Estrada won overwhelmingly in the 1998 elections. They overwhelmingly in Mindanao. It looks like a solid Mindanao vote, but he could not translate his votes to that of his running mate. In 2004, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo won all over Mindanao except in ARMM. Now, some people consider this a miracle, since FPJ, the king of Philippine movies, was universally acknowledged as unbeatable in Mindanao, like his best friend Arab Estrada. Apparently, Hello Garce was not very effective in ARMM. In 2010, the impeached former president still won Mindanao with 40% of the votes, even though he lost everywhere else. In 2016, it cannot be denied that Mr. Duterte won a great deal of the Mindanao vote, winning 23 of the 27 provinces. He is the first person who grew up and lived in Mindanao and who ran and eventually won the presidency. Anyway you cut it, it surely looks like a very solid Mindanao vote for Duterte. It also looks like a good, solid Muslim moral vote. His running mate Cayetano won only in 6 provinces, Duterte's 5 provinces of Davao and Surigao del Sur. So we go to Mindanao's 2022 elections. Can Mr. Duterte's solid Mindanao vote be transferred to his anointed candidate? In 2016, Robredo won 13 provinces, Marcos Jr. won in 8. But this time, the 2 candidates from Luzon will have to consider Manny Pacquiao, born and bred in Mindanao. And Mr. Marcos has a Davaoeña for a running mate, Sara Duterte, who happens to be Duterte's daughter. And there's also some people who think that many people, including Duterte's people, who are campaigning for an Isko Sara ticket in Mindanao. So it looks like anybody's ballgame in Mindanao. On the campaign trail with John Nery, this was mentioned by the first speaker. Last February 20, Isko Moreno's team went to Cotabato City and Maguindanao, while Robredo's team went to Iligan and CDO. Both teams were met by enthusiastic crowds. Solid South. It looks like both Robredo and Moreno have strong following in Mindanao. The candidates have politicians backing them up. Robredo has ex-ARMM chief Mujib Hataman and CDO Mayor and Misamis Oriental gubernatorial candidate Oscar Moreno, among others. Isko has Congressman and gubernatorial candidate Ismail Magudadato, and the apparent support of BAM Chief Minister Murad, among others. I said apparent, that's not sure. Pacquiao is a born and bred Mindanaoan and has strongholds in Sarangani and Jensan. Marcos Jr. has a daughter, has Sarah, his daughter, as running mate. Marcos Jr. has Sarah, daughter of Duterte, as running mate. So it looks like anybody's ballgame in Mindanao. To get opinions on social media situation in Mindanao, during this election period, I interviewed 2 Moros who are very much involved in today's electoral process. Well, I suppose they know something about the mood in the grounds, as it were. Amir Orchavi is a newbie in politics in the sense that his very first time to run for office. He's running for councillor in Cotabato City. but he comes from a family steeped in Mindanao and Philippine politics. Mac Jihad, his family in Lanao del Sur and del Norte, is involved in politics in one way or another in both places. Now he is helping his younger brother, Mo, chair of the Mindanao Multi-Sectoral Advisory Council, organize a movement for Lenny Kiko, especially involving the youth. He's quite... So the response is, how much impact does the social media have in this election? Chavez said only half of the people there is aware of social media as an election tool. But Jihad said it is a big factor in influencing voters, especially in highly urbanized areas in Mindanao. Is fake news a factor? Chavez believes fake news is a big factor, since most people cannot tell what is true and what is not. Jihad believes the opposite, as he thinks that because of the pandemic, the people have learned not to believe everything in the internet. Probably he's talking about COVID posts. But there are a lot of news going around in this election. Are there a lot of fake news? Both say there's a lot of fake news, but Jihad said it is very small compared to the last elections. As he said, it does more harm to the perpetrators, and media platforms are quick to sanction malicious activities. Are you or the people or groups you know campaigning for candidates using social media? How so? Both say that there are a lot of candidates using social media, mainly for publishing daily activities. Chavez said he has an FB page dedicated to his candidacy. Are they spending on ads in social media? Jihad said national candidates do, but he has not seen local candidates do so far. Chavez said he boosts his FB post once in a while, and from time to time he sees his opponent's ads, FB posts. Do you think there will be honest and fair elections overall, nationally, in Mindanao, in your district? And both said no. Chavez explained that either Comelec has long been accomplice to the cheating or its people are plainly inept with regard to cheating. 7, what are you learning about social media in relation to elections in your region or district? Jihad believes that in BAM and most places in Mindanao, vote buying is widely practiced. So he said candidates save their money for that instead of spending money on ads, social media or not. Chavez, on the other hand, is thankful that candidates with little funds can now have a platform where they can reach a wider audience. Now, to get a better feel of sentiments of the people of Mindanao, especially that of the Bangsamoro, I put a Google ad in Facebook, a Google Doc ad. It's a survey form titled On Digital or Social Media Interaction, a survey on the characteristics of residents regarding digital or social media. Now, FB said the whole Mindanao is too big a target. So I just limited it to Davao region, Cotabato City, Socsagen, Holosulu, Barm, ARMM, and Marawi. And all voters, all voting age 18 to 65 plus. And the results, it got a reach of 9,408. But only 212 people clicked the link, and so only 46 people answered the questions, the survey questions. But anyway, 46 people, what they think, it's a good enough number to see how the people in the ground really feel. Are you a registered voter in Mindanao? Only one said no. Almost half of what is your first criterion in voting for a candidate? Almost half of chose candidate's qualification as the first criterion in voting for a candidate. 30% chose campaign platform or promises, and 8.7% were candid enough to choose a relative or friend. How do you usually get to know your candidate? 37% of respondents say they usually get to know their candidates through social media. 20% chose personal meeting, while 22% say through mainstream media. Now, this is quite significant. There are more people who get to know their candidates through social media than through mainstream media. Is a candidate's campaign platform or promises important to you? Well, respondents say, yes, they are important, 87% of them. As shown earlier, that is the second highest consideration after candidates' qualifications. Except for gaming, how often do you go to the internet? More than 3/4 of the respondents say they go to the internet 2 to 3 times a day. Now, this proves the statistics that Filipinos spend a lot of time in the internet. Do you believe everything you read in the internet? Well, they do not necessarily believe what they read in the internet. 39% say they believe some of it, while 24% say they do not believe everything in it. 19.6% say they believe half of it, while some 15% believe most, if not all, that is put on the internet. So, from the numbers, it looks like there are still 15 to 20% who are most susceptible to fake news because they believe everything in the internet, or almost everything. Do you think elections in your area are honest and clean? Well, 35% believe that elections are never clean and honest in their area, while the same number of people believe that sometimes there were clean and honest elections. Now, there are 22% who say that most of the time elections were clean and honest, while about 9% believe that elections in the area have always been clean and honest. So we have the never and sometimes answer overwhelms the most and always responses, 57 to 31. What is the biggest hindrance to clean and honest elections? 41.3% of the respondents say vote buying is the biggest hindrance. And 32.6% believe that political dynasty is a big hindrance. The remaining respondents, 26%, believe that cheating is the biggest hindrance. Half of them say cheating in the counting at the prisons, while half say it is cheating by COMELEC. Can the internet or social media help bring about a cleaner or more honest elections? The respondents were quite optimistic that social media can help bring about a cleaner and more honest elections are twice as many as those who don't believe so. 67% against 33%. How can the internet or social media help bring about a cleaner or more honest elections? While there are some who say that social media cannot help, there are many more who said they can. These are some of the suggestions, many of them, really. In other words, the respondents are saying that social media can help bring about a cleaner and more honest elections by being the platform for people to post any anomalies or irregularities in the electoral process, as well as being the platform to better educate the people on detecting anomalies on the electoral process, as well as detecting fake news. On the other hand, some respondents don't like social media because there are many fake news there, according to them. Conclusion. When it comes to spending time in the internet and social media, mostly using cell phones, Filipinos are the world's champions. That is the reason why the Philippines is the social media nation of the world. It is but logical for candidates to reach out to the electorate through social media because there are many, and it is widely used and is much cheaper. According to Pulse Asia, 84% of adults in NCR use internet, but only 47% of adults in Mindanao. Thus, the internet is only half as significant in Mindanao as it is in NCR. Since 2010, people have allegedly manipulated the electoral process, mainly through social media. International political consultants, Facebook, PR firms, troll armies are allegedly involved in the Philippine electoral process. Various groups have called on Filipinos to beware of fake news and misinformation in social media, as, quote, it remains a key player in the upcoming 2022 elections due to the COVID-19 pandemic. There are many people susceptible to fake news. From the sample survey, 50% believe most, if not all, that is in the internet. 39% believe about half of what is in the internet. Chavi said most people there cannot discern what is fake or not. There are 15 0.5 million voters in Mindanao, with Muslim voters in Mindanao numbering around 3.6 million. Many areas in Mindanao will be labeled hotspots and be put again under COMELEC and PNP military control. Is there a solid Mindanao vote? Will there be an overwhelming vote in Mindanao for one candidate this year? Not likely. Votes will most probably be split many ways. Among the survey respondents, some don't like social media because there are many fake news there. But a great majority of them believes that social media can bring cleaner and more honest elections. Thanks to 2022 Global Overview Report by We Are Social and Hootsuite for the graphs. I'm Jamal Ashti Abbas, and I thank you.
Thank you, Professor Abbas.